Hello, Marian class. Father Miller here. As you can see, I have a special guest. You might have remembered her. Was it in November or December when you came and had Mass? I remember you were at Mass with us this year.
It was in December.
Yeah, you were up in the area. Okay. Right here we have Sister Rose, Mulligan, correct? I got the last name right. Okay, I always worry about the last names. Rose is easy. She is a Marian grad, and I'm going to let you take it from here. Just tell us a little about yourself, where you're from.
Okay.
You are a Marian grad, what year you graduated, and then tell us what you're doing now, what's your assignment and that type of thing, and we'll take it from there. Okay, Sister Rose?
Okay, great. So as Father said, my name's Sister Rose Mulligan, and I grew up in Jim Thorpe, which is not too far away. I went to Immaculate Conception grade school and then Marian High School, which I loved my time there at Marian. I graduated in 1984.
I was afraid to ask you that question.
Yeah, no, I should put it out there. 1984. And you know, actually in my class, we have a young man who became a priest. He's down in South Carolina right now. He entered the Oblates of St. Francis de Sales.
Okay.
And another young woman entered our community. Her name's Sister Maureen Donati, and she's principal up in Shamokin right now. But she entered a few years after I did, but we were around the same time there.
Great.
So with a couple of vocations around our time.
Yeah.
And I currently teach at Immaculata University. When I was at Marian High School, I had such a great education in chemistry, believe it or not, although I was a little afraid when I went to college to take that, but I realized after I got in college,
they still do. Shout out to Mr. Valent. They still have a great chemistry program.
And I've met them up there. Yeah. So, you know, don't take for granted what you're learning there. Because when I got to college, I realized, wow, I think I know most of this that we were having our freshman year. And it was because of the background that I had at Marian. Yeah. And so I decided to major in chemistry. And during my first, I've been in the community now for about 30 some years. I entered in 1986. And I taught 7th and 8th grade for about 10 years. I taught in South Philly and New Jersey. And during that time, the community needed people teaching chemistry. So they asked if I would go back to graduate school. So I did. And I ended up with a doctorate in chemistry, and I teach here now at our university. And I was here for a few years, but then the community asked me to work in vocation ministry. So I did that for about 12 years.
I remember you doing that.
Yeah, and then just recently, the past 2 years, I've been back here at Immaculata teaching in the chemistry department. So
yeah, at a college level, that's pretty cool.
I'm enjoying it a lot. Yeah. It's neat to, you know, and like this, we're doing online with the students right now, so it's great to be able to see them and all. So. Yeah,
that's great. And so you mentioned that you were part of Marian class in 1984. Just maybe. Again, I want to kind of keep this 30 minutes, 40 minutes long for the kids because there's going to be questions, so they have to watch this. There's going to be questions and all this. But just tell us a little bit about what are some of the reasons and factors that had you and moved you into the religious life?
Oh, that's a great question. So currently I teach a forensic science class, and you know, I always, right now when I'm teaching this, I'm always reminding the students to pay attention to the clues in their life and clues in the class, you know, and some clues are very visible, like there might be, you know, bloodstain patterns or something, or a note left behind on a crime scene. But I always remind them that some of the clues are invisible, like the fingerprints. You know, you can't always see them, but they're very, very real. And I use that analogy because, you know, in looking back, especially those years I worked in vocations, it forced me to look back in my life and say, where was God calling me? You know, how did this happen in my life? And I realized it was a lot of little clues, I think, that God was leaving me through the years, some of them more visible and most of them invisible. And I guess when I say like an invisible clue that God's giving us, really it's something that we sense inside, you know, and it might be like a sense of peace about something, or a sense of joy, or a sense of contentment. And that's why it's so important. And what I loved at Marian, I didn't even realize they were teaching me, is the importance of prayer and having some quiet time to let God speak into our hearts. So looking back at my life, you know, I grew up in Jim Thorpe. I grew up in a normal family. I always say that. I never say perfect family because no one of us has a perfect family, right?
Exactly.
That's what makes it perfect, though, that they're normal. And I knew our faith was important to my parents, my mom and dad, because we went to mass every weekend and all. I wouldn't say we were like overly religious, but I knew it was an important piece of our life growing up. And I went to a really small grade school. There was only 4 classrooms. We were double grades. And it was in 5th grade that I had a sister that taught me. And her name was Sister Eileen. She was 5th, 6th, and 7th grade. And, there was just something about her that I just realized, wow, she's so helpful to people and she's so in love with life and with God. And I remember just thinking, maybe I could do that with my life someday. Maybe I could become a sister like her. And at the same time, I had an uncle who was a priest, Monsignor Mulligan. He had since passed away, but
In Mulligan?
yeah.
Oh, we've had this conversation before.
Yeah,
Love that guy. I miss him.
Yeah, so he was my uncle, my dad's brother, and so I grew up with having somebody in the religion business in the family, and he certainly was an influence. And also my parish priest, I love Monsignor Dooley. He was a really fun-loving guy, and he was just really dynamic in the parish and all, and told great stories, I remember. Anyway, so that was 5th grade. I started to have the thoughts of it. 6th grade, though, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, I didn't think of it too much. But in 6th grade, I remember reading the book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, one of those Chronicles of Narnia.
Okay, yeah.
And I remember there was a whole series, and I put the books down, and I thought, oh my gosh, if Jesus is like Aslan the lion in those stories, like he's wild. And I want to get to know him a little bit better. He's not boring like I thought he was. And then 7th grade, I remember one of those Star Wars movies came out. It was The Empire Strikes Back. And there's a scene in there where Han Solo, the handsome good guy, was captured by those evil stormtroopers, and he's ready to be bound up and get frozen solid. But I remember in that movie, I started crying, but I didn't want my family to think I was weird or anything, so I'm holding back the sniffles. And I didn't even realize I was praying at the time, but I was thinking, oh God, I just want to help you in the battle of good versus evil in the world. Like I was ready to get my lightsaber out, and go whoosh through the audience there. So a movie was leading me to think about my relationship with God. And then I remember 8th grade one time going to the grocery store with my mom. And I'm saying this because it's a lot of normal, ordinary ways that I think God speaks to us. I was going down the aisle, the grocery store, and there was a disabled person up ahead. And I remember as we passed by just thinking, God, I don't know what I want to do with my life, but whatever I do, I just want to help people with it. Yeah. And I felt like a scene from The Grinch, where the heart grows 3 times its size. And then it was my freshman year in high school. I loved sports, but I also loved music. And I went the music route. I joined the band, and we had a blast. We played for all the football games and concerts and basketball games and all. But I remember thinking, wow, when you work together as a group, you could really get the crowd involved with the game, or you could really lift people's spirits, like when you're praying for a concert or something. And I guess I used to look at the priests in the parish and the sisters that I knew, and I thought, hey, they do the same thing. They're out there working like a force in the world, and probably doing more together than maybe what they would have been able to do alone. So it was some of the beginnings of it. I guess it was my junior year in high school when it really started welling up inside of me. And I had a sister that taught me chemistry. And the one day, the way she was teaching, she's at the board writing all this stuff. And I had one of those light bulb moments. I thought, wow, I think I get this. And I started to think, hey, there has to be a God behind all this science stuff. It's too complex but elegant, to have just happened by chance. And I did something at that moment that was really, really dangerous to do in school. I didn't pull the fire alarm or anything like that. But what I did—
Don't give him any ideas.
I know, don't do that. But you know what I did that's just as dangerous, though, probably? I started to daydream. And that, look at where I ended up because of the daydream. I started looking at this sister who was teaching, and I thought, why in the world did she ever become a sister? It seems like she could have made a lot of money. It seems like she would have made a great mother. And I just started, becoming so curious about it. And it's almost like those days and weeks afterwards that the thought kept popping up in my mind when I least expected it. And whenever it popped up in my mind, 2 things happened inside of me. One was I got really excited about the idea, and I thought, wow, this is a neat possibility, and could this be? But then on the flip side, part of me was like, wait a minute, I'm not perfect. And what would my family say? What would my friends say? Do young people even do this today? I mean, I was really awkward and afraid to talk about it to anybody. So time went on, and, little things happened too at school. Like we had mass every week, and I used to look at some of the teachers that I had, and I think, they're so intelligent in their areas, and they're so helpful to us. And I know they're juggling families and all that. But when I saw them receive communion, I thought they just have something that I want. It just anchored them or gave them a peace. And I thought there's another side of life that they're paying attention to, and I want to pay attention to that too, besides, the academics. And so, anyway, I guess it was my senior year. I finally wrote to a sister that I knew. She had been there and she got transferred, and she was about 2 hours away. And I thought, if I write a letter to her, at least I'm doing something about this, but I won't be able to see her reaction to it. So I put the letter in the mailbox and get this snail mail back about a week later. And I remember taking it up to my room and, reading this letter. And I thought, as I read the letter, I just became so happy, because in the letter she said, Rose, she said, yes, I think God might be calling you. And she said, God certainly calls, young, bright, beautiful people like we see with all the Marian students there.
Are you talking about my students now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Even
I
yours.
just wasn't sure. You're going to ring me up for that one.
They look better over the screen, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, I just thought, oh my gosh. And what she said in there was that, yes, young people still do this today. And she encouraged me to pray about it, and to maybe at some point go on a retreat, what they call a discernment retreat. It's one where you go and you're not making any commitment or anything. You're not signing on any dotted line, but you go and you get to meet some of the sisters and get to ask some questions and learn about the life a little bit. So I realized I'd never lived away from home. I did go to college. And while I was at college, I was loving it. I loved the academics, the social life and everything, but it was always still there. And I thought, I really need to pay attention to this. And eventually I did go on a retreat, and I really enjoyed it. And I thought, I want to go back and try it again. And I did. I went quite a few times. And then I decided, I think, I talked with the sister, and that maybe it would be time to apply and to enter the community. So I did that. And I'm really grateful to God that He helped me to see these clues, and that He had people in my life that, encouraged me, to look into that. Not every day's perfect, that's in any life. I think that's unrealistic.
Anybody, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But when you do what you're called to do, there's a joy that comes with that. And I would say the best vocation is the one that you're called to. And that's why it's so important to pay attention to that.
Oh, amen. And I can say definitely, like Marian High School, like we miss you guys, just the presence of religious sisters in the school, missed. It is what it is, but
in fact, Sister Bernard was my chemistry teacher, and she was the last principal there, and then also Sister Judy too.
Yeah.
I know they were both two of the last ones there, and I know we always feel bonded, with the Marian connection.
Yeah, you're always a part of us, and even though you're not with us right now, and again, one of the reasons why I wanted to reach out to you, not only if you're Marian connection, but also if you're Immaculate Heart of Mary, your religious order connection, because again, there was such a great presence there. So it seems like your order, there's a lot of focus on the teaching. Is that correct? A lot of your religious sisters teaching. Does your order, would they assign sisters to other jobs and assignments, like hospital work or anything like that? Or
well, so whenever a community is founded, there's a couple things that happen. One is we say each community has a charism about them, and that's like a spirit about them. Same as
they know that word from my lessons.
Oh, good. Okay, so same as different high schools have a spirit about them. The same thing with religious communities. So our charism, what we're called to live, and a part of our spirituality is we're called to live love, creative hope, and fidelity. And so that's not new under the sun, but it's the way we live it out and what we do with our, as sisters and all that. And we were also founded primarily to be educators. So it was this priest, he was out in Monroe, Michigan, out in the 1800s with the pioneers, and he realized nobody was there to catechize the children. And he wrote to a lot of religious communities, And all the religious communities responded the same as what happens today. They say, we don't have enough sisters to send you. We can't send you any. So he famously said, well, if I can't find sisters, I will make sisters. I'll organize a community. And, sure enough, there was a young woman in her 20s out there who approached him and said, Father, I don't know why this keeps coming up, the thought of religious life, but, I would like to. And he said, her name was Trez. He said, Trez, hold on, because we're trying to form a community out here. And he knew two sisters in the Baltimore area, and they were going to leave their community and come out and help him form one. So they became our first three sisters. Wow. And their primary role was to be educators, to educate, especially with the sacraments, and teach people about that. So through the years, we've tried to be faithful to the umbrella of education. So we say our mission is to catechize, to evangelize, and teach. So our community, mostly we would be under those roles. Now, it might not be within a classroom per se. It might be serving in a parish as a DRE.
Yep.
It might be in a hospital, maybe serving as a pastoral minister. There's an educational piece to that. We have literacy centers for those who have come to the United States and they're learning the English language and all. But I would say the hallmark through the years has been our service within school settings and as DREs in religious education in parishes. But and when I say school setting, I mean elementary school, high school, and then also university level. So all of those. We do have some sisters who are nurses.
Okay.
We don't have a whole lot. So we have a few that have worked at Camilla Hall or nursing home through the years. And we have
Camilla Hall, that's the place where a lot of your retired sisters would go to, or those that are like ill type of thing, right?
Yes, and that's a place, so for like recuperation after a surgery or something, and then also our retired and infirm sisters would be their convent home. And we've had some sisters in nursing, and they teach here at Immaculata also, but that's not one of our main apostolates. Right. Mainly we're within the educational realm.
Now, you're not just in the United States, right? Now you were formed in the United States, but you're in other places in the world, correct?
The only other country we're in currently is in Peru, and we've had a long history in Peru since 1920. The bishop down there had asked for sisters to come down, and the archbishop here, the cardinal in Philadelphia here, asked for sisters to go down. So our first sisters went down by boat. So we have two missions right now, actually 3 schools right now in Peru, and actually we've taken students from Immaculata down there each year to take part in the mission and all of that. Obviously, we're not going this year, but other years. So.
Now, how would one of your religious sisters end up in Peru? Would it be something that they would request? Would it be something that what it's called the Mother Superior? She would be the person that tells you, you go here, you go to this school, or is it a combination of both?
Combination of both, and that ties in a little bit with the vow of obedience, so we take a vow of obedience, and we say that we'll go where we're sent, but it is a conversation that happens. So our community, we do have our administration, so we have they used to use the term Mother General, now we say General Superior.
Okay, General Superior.
We call her name's Sister Mary Ellen, and then we have 4 sisters on our council, and then we have 4 sisters who are our regional superiors. So like, let's say 20 convents might belong to a certain region, and that sister would come and visit each year, and she visits each sister, and there's like a preference sheet. She'll say, I know you're teaching this grade level, or you're working in this parish in this capacity. If we had a need in this area, would you be able to do that? And for the most part, unless there's some serious reason why you couldn't, usually, you would say yes, or, they give you time to pray about that. So there is some dialogue that happens. It used to be in years past that sisters would get an envelope, and they would open it up and say, you're going to Timbuktu, you're going to Peru, or whatever. But now they would know ahead of time, and there would be some dialogue about that ahead.
Well, there's some wisdom, because the last thing you want to do is send somebody who absolutely doesn't want to go there and will make everybody's life miserable there, right?
Yeah, there's that human element that you want to dialogue a little bit about.
Right. You send a priest to a parish he doesn't want to go to, he just makes everybody in the parish miserable. Right?
There's a ripple effect that happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a young woman who is interested in joining the order, let's kind of take her through the stages quick.
Okay.
So you have somebody maybe just graduated from high school, just graduated from college, and maybe she did all the, the retreats and talked to you. now she's ready to enter. What is that like? What's that process like?
Okay, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because there is that, like, that pre-entrance, come and see phase, discernment, pre-entrance. So it's not meant to be an overnight decision, just like getting married. It's not meant to be an overnight decision. And the church in her wisdom has a process, just I know, like for priests, it's almost from when a person enters, it's almost like an 8-year process until a person would make their final vows, because it gives the young person a chance to live the life a little bit to see, is this, for me? And so when a person enters, I have this show and tell here. Okay,
there you go.
This is a flyer that has our newer members on here. And when a person would first enter the congregation, they would be called a postulant. And a postulant comes from a Latin term. It means like seeking. So as a postulant, we have Stephanie here, who's a postulant.
And notice she's not wearing the habit yet, right? So a postulant,
no.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So she's wearing like a blue suit, but she doesn't have the veil or anything.
Right.
And she doesn't have like our congregational crucifix, and she doesn't have a ring or anything like that yet. She goes by her first name. So she's entered, but she's not formally a member yet. She's living the life day by day, and she's getting to learn about her life. But after a period of 11 months, it's a discernment period. If she decides, and if the community sees it's also a good fit, she would request to become a novice. And it's a beautiful ceremony that we have. It's called reception. And that's when the novices would come into chapel for the first time wearing their habit. They receive the congregational crucifix. And you'll notice our novices have a white veil on. The white means that they're new to religious life. And that's when also they would receive their religious name. And they also receive our rule book. So every religious congregation has a book that's very special to them. It's called their rule. Our rule is called Faithful Witness. And it's not do's and don'ts like a checklist, but it's more, how do you live the spirit of the life, so anyway, we have
now their name. They don't choose their name, right?
It used to be, let's say prior to Vatican II, religious life went with the understanding, and you see this in scripture, that a person, when they're called to a new ministry within the church or whatever, they're given a new name. However, after Vatican II, the teaching on this was that religious life isn't a separate sacrament. It's a fuller living of the baptismal vows. And so it was permissible to go back to our baptismal names. So oftentimes nowadays, when choosing a religious name, they'll keep some form of their baptismal name, but then maybe add a saint's name that they have special devotion to or whatever.
Just like confirmation or something.
Yeah, like confirmation. So like Sister Rachel, she's from the Fleetwood area, from the Allentown Diocese.
Oh, my area.
Yeah.
That's where my parents live, in Blandon.
Oh, really? Okay. Yes, she's from that area. And she went to Westchester University.
So did I.
Oh, you're a kid. That's right. I forgot.
You might be my twin. I don't even know it.
Anyway, she has special devotion to St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, so she chose Sister Rachel Elizabeth, and Rachel was her baptismal name.
What's her home parish there? Holy Guardian Angels. It says it right there on the
HGA. It's HGA.
Yeah, HGA. Okay. Yeah, it says it right there on the post. I was trying to look clearly.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, there it is. I see it. I got it.
And then she entered with Sister Jennifer Maria, and that's Sister Jennifer's baptismal name, and she happened to have devotion to the Blessed Mother also, and so she chose to keep that. So, so they're a postulant for 1 year, and then they're a novice for 2 years. The first year novice, the second year novice. The first year they're really learning, about our prayer and spirituality, about the vows. They go through our whole rule book, every single point, and it's beautiful, but it's an intense year. And the second year is when they focus even more on the vows, and then also our mission. Okay, so they would look into some form to evangelize, catechize, or teach, in those areas. And then at the end of that second year, so about that 2-year period, then they would be preparing to make their first vows. And when we make our first vows, we make vows of chastity, poverty, and obedience, but we only make them for 1 year. And then we keep renewing them for a period of about 5 to 6 years. And then we would make our final vows. So the other sisters that you see on here are what we would call temporary professed or junior professed sisters.
Okay.
And they're all in different stages. So the Sister Catherine, Teresa, and Sister Christina would be the next two in line to be making their final
Oh,
vows.
I know Sister Christina.
Oh, right, and she's from
Long
the
time
Alabama
ago. Yeah.
diocese. Okay, she grew up in the Reading area.
Yes, and her grandfather, I think, was a permanent deacon, if I remember correctly. Deacon
Yes,
Dudek,
he
who
was.
used to be at Holy Rosary.
Okay.
Yeah, my home parish. So, but anyways.
Oh, neat.
Yeah,
Father Marty Kern is her home pastor.
Yeah. Yep.
St. Colin Fells.
Yep.
So, and these junior professors are from all over. We have Sister Stephanie, who's from the Virginia area, and she also lived in Annapolis, Maryland. We have Sister Amanda, who's from Bucks County. Sister Elizabeth, she is from Savannah, Georgia. We have sisters that teach there, and that's how she met up with her sisters.
Cool.
And Sister Christine's from North Carolina. We have sisters in Raleigh, and when she was in college, she met up with some of our sisters. So you never know. God works in the most unpredictable ways and all. So that's a little bit of the process that you would see. So it'd be postulant, novice, and then temporary professed.
Great. Leading up then to the final vows. Now, in my video, I told them that they also call it perpetual vows. Is that another name? Okay,
right.
Great.
So we would make vows of chastity, poverty, and obedience for all our life.
And so that's perfect, because I'm going to lead into that next topic. Now, you already talked a little bit about obedience and how, a lot of times when you get that assignment changed, so you're out of school and you love the kids and you're very comfortable, and all of a sudden now, you get that envelope, you get that phone call, and you have to go somewhere else. And part of the obedience is to say, okay, God, this is through the mind, through the heart of the Mother Superior, this is where you're sending me. But if you want to say a little bit more about obedience, and then talk about what it means about poverty and chastity as well.
Okay. Just to backtrack for a little bit, when we talk about the vows, a lot of times, I remember when I first started learning about them, you hear the word evangelical councils. That's what they're called. And I used to think, what does that mean? And here I am taking them, and I don't even know what that means. Well, evangelical means it comes from the Gospels, and counsel means like it's a way of life, a way that you're showing a path in life. And so when we take these vows, these evangelical counsels, to live this consecrated life, we're saying that we want to consecrate our lives to Christ. What we want to do is to be Christ's presence, on earth, and to follow more closely in his steps. So Christ, when he walked the face of the earth, he lived a poor life, he lived a chaste life, and he lived an obedient life. And so, by taking these vows, we hope to imitate him for our own growth, and then hopefully also to remind others of his presence, in the world. So the vow of chastity, all people are called to be chaste, and chaste means to be a loving person in the life that we're called to. So
and I taught them that too. So I hope.
Oh, good. Okay.
I hope they're putting all
I always
this
like
together.
to think of chastity being like a warm, loving person. If you could think of that at the middle of the road, and we can err on two extremes. One extreme would be to be a very lustful person and just using people for physical pleasure and all. The other extreme, though, would be to be a cold-hearted person, and just not caring and not getting involved with people's lives. So there's a middle of the road that we're called to in terms of being chaste and loving. And when we take that vow, we're espousing ourselves to Christ, but it means, though, too, that we're engaged with people's lives, and that we're certainly the other sisters that we live with in community, but then those that we are serving and helping. So everybody needs intimacy in their lives. So it doesn't mean that you're, somebody said it's not like you're the frozen chosen. It's, you still need friends in your life, and you still need to be connected with family and all that. But then also too, to always go back to that relationship with Christ, and where that's fed with prayer. So our prayer life is very important, and that hinges upon chastity, but also all the vows. So, as sisters, we gather together every morning for morning prayer. We have mass, and then we gather at the end of the day for evening prayer. But then we commit to at least an hour of private prayer in between there, where usually we meditate on the scriptures. We pray the rosary each day. We pray the Stations of the Cross each day also as part of our prayer, and then some form of spiritual reading. So there's some ways that we pray in our own personal time. vow of poverty, when we hear the word poverty, we always think, oh, aren't we trying to get rid of poverty in the world? Why are we purposely choosing this? And as you could see, I have a computer here that I'm using. I do have a cell phone that I use because sometimes I'm on the road and all. So it doesn't mean that I don't have things. I don't own a whole lot of things, but you need things, you need tools to do the job that you're given too. And we all work in parishes or schools, so we do get paid for doing that. We get a stipend, but it doesn't come to each one of us personally. What happens is it goes to the community, and that gets pooled together, and that gets used for our health insurance. It gets used for groceries. It gets used for gas in the car, for paying bills if I needed a new pair of shoes or something. We each get a small amount per month that we can then use for personal things. So if I wanted to go to the movies, I could, if there's a good movie out there, but I couldn't do it all the time, because money goes very quickly, as we all know. If I wanted to get a birthday present for somebody in my family, I could do that. But the neat part about the vow of poverty is my family knows I don't have a whole lot of money. They don't expect large gifts either. And there's something very freeing in that, because there's a different expectation there. They're not expecting something large and, humongous or anything. And so we try to be very practice good stewardship with what we have too. So, we might have something, but we want to make sure that it lasts, and we want to take care of it and all. So all of those things are part of living a life of poverty also. And then always mindful that, so the money that gets pulled together that we might, bring in from our stipends, some of that then goes to some of maybe our missions that maybe have less, or, it might go towards a pool that we can help out some families or whatever also. So, we're always trying to use our resources that way. And then the vow of obedience, as you said, that's the word obedience comes from the Latin to means to listen. So, most often, our changes come about when we're in dialogue with, our superior and talking about where the need might be. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I remember I was teaching 8th grade, loved it. And when they asked me to go into study, I cried buckets because I thought, I enjoyed the students I had, but I was looking forward to the students that I was going to be getting that next year. And there's part of a wild trust in God's plan, a divine providence that, for some reason, God wants us in some places at certain times in our life. And we just have to trust that, and trust that the next person coming in, that God means for that person to be with those people, So it's neat to realize there's a bigger plan that God has than maybe each one of us can predict. And I know for myself, I've learned and grown through all the different experiences and the people that I've met, along the way. I think God certainly speaks through those people.
I mean, I've had 10 years of pre's. I've had so many assignments already. I mean, I loved every single one of them. Never had an assignment I didn't love.
Same here. Yeah.
So I was devastated to go. Now the people might be happy, but but that's now while you were talking, if you notice, I was looking over to here. I wasn't texting or anything. I was bringing something up. So, as I ask you the last question, I'm gonna retrieve this and I'm gonna bring this up and put it in our background. Then, okay? So I'm gonna surprise you a little bit. But just as kind of our closing remarks here, what advice would you give to any young woman out there, whether a marrying student or not marrying student? Because, like I said, I want to kind of broaden this to let as many people see this as possible, just to. Sure. Because I think a lot of people out there have never met a religious sister in their life. So I'm sure, they would have questions. And so hopefully some of that clears up, and hopefully it also tells what you're all about. And so what are while you do that, I'm going to start retrieving this thing.
Okay.
So,
all right.
So I am listening. But what advice would you give them? Words of encouragement, those sort of things.
Wow. I would say number one, be open. Sometimes people say, no, I'm never going to think of that. I'm never going to think of marriage, or I'm never going to think of religious life. I would say just be open, and just say, okay, Lord, I'm going to put this in your hands. And I know you know what's going to make me happiest in this life. And I'm going to trust you on this, but help me to know what that is. So I think being open in God's presence with it. I think the other thing is to not overly put pressure on yourself. Sometimes I meet people and they say, well, I need to know by the time I graduate college, or I need to know by my second year out of college or something. Sometimes it doesn't always work on that time frame. So not to overly put time constraint pressures on. Third thing I would say is to talk to somebody about it. You know, we all grow up in families and we have experiences of married life all around us, but just to even ask, you know, to talk with somebody and say, I recognize that. Even
Yeah.
just to talk to somebody. This was this past summer, you know,
Yep.
God works in really mysterious ways when you least expect it. I had the opportunity to go to Italy this summer with
Yep.
Father Brian and with Father Alan Hoffa and a whole
Yep.
group from the
Yeah,
area.
whole group, about 40 of us.
About 40 of us, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I didn't never expected to be there at the Colosseum or at the Vatican and all. And, you know, when I always say when we give our life generously to God, whether it's religious life, priesthood, married life, you know, these unexpected things happen. So anyway, it was a great memory.
Well, this is a special picture for me too. I hate selfies. I hate looking at selfies. This is one of the few times I actually ever taken a selfie, and it's with you. So it's a great honor.
Wow, well, thank you.
I just those types of things. But yeah, it was a Rome trip. You know, we pray for them now.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure their economy is hidden. So I'm thinking, let's send Alan Hoffa, Father Hoffa, back to Italy, have him visit a couple of restaurants. He'll get that economy.
Yeah. We could help out too.
Yeah.
That's true.
Great.
Yeah.
So.
And then one last thing to the young
Go
people,
ahead,
I would
please.
say prayer. Prayer is so important. And you know, there's the anchor prayers we say, you know, the Our Fathers and Hail Marys, but also prayers, that dialogue, just being honest with God and saying, you know, I need your help here. Where do you know I'll be the best in life? Because God always wants us to be holiest and happiest in life. And so, you know, it's worth our paying attention to him and asking that question. It takes a great risk to ask God that question, but it's really worth your life, you know, for that.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
On behalf of my class, my theology class, they thank you. There will be questions on this, so
oh, good. Okay.
They have to watch the video in its entirety, take notes,
right,
and those types of things. Thank you for your time.
Oh,
like
you're
I
welcome.
said,
Anytime.
you know, trying to
Anything
make good
for
of the
Marian.
best. You're welcome, and trying to make great of a best of a terrible situation here.
Yeah.
I don't think we would have an opportunity to do this if it wasn't
for
this coronavirus stuff.
So stay healthy yourself too.
Thank you. You too. Okay.
I'm praying for all the Marian community.
Okay. So I'm just